because one of the things that I want to kind of introduce as the project goes is that there's no need to create something that exists. It's BJJ is very good on the ground. There's a BJJ self-defense version too, which I'm curious to get to know more about, but it's not as big though. But then still, BJJ is very good on the ground. MMA is very good as a combat sport, but there's self-defense curriculums as well. But the question is, what place can specifically Aikido play in the realm of all these different things? And that's what I'm excited to consider, because so one of the questions is, why are people specifically drawn to Aikido? Why do they go there instead of somewhere else? And
That's true.
and one of the answers that I found is I was actually yesterday I was introducing the new program. I'm already testing out the program, part of the program with my group, and the first test drive was successful. People enjoyed it. But we were looking at, I mentioned I'm going to split Aikido into two parts. So one is the traditional / self-development, and the other is effective self-defense. So the first one, I'm already testing it. I already have some basic layout, and I was saying to my group that, expressing all my inner thoughts that Aikido is not very effective, etc., because I wasn't talking to them about that too much. And I said, most people, I made this quote, I said, most people come to Aikido not because they want to learn self-defense, but because they just want a certain type of development practice. And I saw a lot of people were like nodding their heads, and I realized it's true. That my group, most of my group, wouldn't be interested actually on a big level in a self-defense curriculum, and that's not why they came to Aikido. And at the same time, I would like to say that if somebody wants to be a kick-ass fighter, there's already great practices for that. So that brings us back to the question of, so what role Aikido has specifically to play in the world if it's enhanced.
Yeah, it's very interesting because I don't think people ever stumble into Aikido. Like, they're looking for Aikido.
Right.
Because I know in my dojo, because someone would always have to watch a session first before they could participate.
Right.
And a lot of people would just be interested and they'll just walk in. And you can always kind of feel the people who are going to actually come for the next session where they can get involved, as opposed to just for the first session, because they already know what to expect. But people who are just like very keen on learning, very martial, very practical self-defense, you can tell that they've lost interest within the first hour.
Right. But this is actually, so you're bringing to a great question that one thing that I consider is that Aikido has a certain identity crisis. And the issue is, in general, in life, an issue is if we try to be good at everything. I think we spoke on a personal level, we spoke about that. So it's a bad decision to try to be good at everything because we won't be able to. And also on a professional level, I know as well that if I'm trying to present myself as, let's say, a good, well, just random examples, good programmer, good actor, and good, I don't know, doctor, whatever, then people will have trouble to really identify who I am, and they won't, when they need a doctor per se or a programmer, they won't actually address me because I'm kind of this guy with not clearly who he is. If you want a doctor, you go to a doctor. So with Aikido, there's a problem here because it claims itself to be part this kind of artistic self-development practice, where self-development actually is not that much advanced in most Aikido clubs, as far as I see. It's just you train and then you read about Osensei on your own, and then you learn philosophy by yourself. Somewhere, yes, most places no. And then the other side, Aikido claims to be that at the same time, we are very efficient as a self-defense martial art. We are all about self-defense. And it's not really that either. And so when somebody is considering, should I practice Aikido? The question is, why should I practice Aikido rather than something else? If I want self-development, I go to, let's say, yoga or some course. If I want self-defense, I go to a self-defense course or BJJ or MMA. So what's the point with Aikido? And I think that's one of the troubles with it, because it doesn't have a clear identity of what it is and what it's trying to do. There's very hardcore Aikido, there's very softcore Aikido, and it's all over the place. And then nobody has a clue what it's about. And then people have misconceptions as well. If people take it for real that Aikido is all about self-defense, redirecting the energy, not using strength, etc., all these semi-myths, then, as you said, the person comes to the dojo expecting that he will receive, he will be like a great fighter because he'll be like Steven Seagal, and he looks at these guys just gently playing with each other, and it depends on the dojo, of course, but then for them it's like, what the hell is happening here? Somebody else goes there with the idea of this is artistic, this is very aesthetic, this is all about development, and they see some hardcore guys smashing each other to the ground, and they're like, where's the thing which I'm searching for? And then it's all over the place, and eventually nobody.
All lost.
Sorry?
It's all lost.
Right, exactly. So it tries to be everything, and in the end it's neither, which is why I'm interested to try not to try to bring Aikido to the level, which this is one of the things I'll try to clearly express in the future, especially on the main public level, but that Aikido, my intention is not to bring Aikido to the level of MMA. If somebody will do that, awesome, great. I think some people are capable of doing that, but I think MMA is already great as it is. It doesn't necessarily miss Aikido, maybe, but it's not my realm. But then at the same time, people who come to Aikido as a self-development practice, it lacks a lot of elements. So how does that translate to everyday life? How do you practice that on the mat? And I actually have those things that I use them, and this is why I'm excited to share them. But then at the same time, if my people are practicing Aikido and they're practicing for self-development reasons, but still it's officially a martial art, I want them to know how to defend themselves, at least on the basic level. I want them to be safe. I want to make sure that they don't, as I think, was it Nathaniel or Francisco who said, it's not so peaceful to get your ass kicked. So, Aikido is all about peace, but that doesn't mean we have to give ourselves to ass kicking. So the question is, so one of the visions that I have, and again, I'll try to express it clearly in the future, because there's a lot of misconceptions right now about what I'm trying to do on YouTube. So that Aikido would be that self-development practice, body coordination, flexibility, health, kind of the good state of mind, good relationship with conflict, etc. Inner conflict, outer conflict. But then at the same time, that there would be a curriculum that if somebody misses the martial part, that they would go there, practice for a week, for a weekend, and they would be fine. Then they can go back and train their Aikido. So that's one of the things that I'm interested about.
Yeah, I read that in your PDF that you were thinking of having like intensive sessions,
right,
where you could go down and you could have, I'm assuming you may separate those sessions between, the two aspects that you wanted to focus on, the traditional self-development and then the martial self-defense.
Right.
Was that the intention of separating them
two,
or actually, about having them both together?
Right. Actually, that's exactly it. For me, this is very much an open process. So I am all about open ears. And even now, as I have clear intentions, a vision, every time somebody says something where I see that there's a potential of truth, somebody says something where it conflicts to what I said, but it might be true, then I always take it to heart, consider it, and if it's true, then I change it. So it's all open for change. We will see how that goes, especially the more it's exposed to people, the more people try it, practice it, bring it to different places, countries, the more there is a chance that we'll see the lacks. We'll see, okay, actually, we need more extra time for self-defense, or actually, we need more for self-development, whatever that would be. But right now, to answer your question, the intention is, yes, to really present a clear way. So actually, the first part is the issues that it's addressing. Is one of the parts is that Aikido has difficult, trying to find my English here, but it doesn't necessarily, one way would be to say it has a big dropout rate in that sense, which is true. But also what I want to reflect with that is that it's hard, it's not easily accessible. Aikido has kind of a big, definitely MMA and BJJ has the two, but on a different way. The trouble with Aikido sometimes that I see is that you're expected to do very difficult mechanically, body mechanic wise things from very early on. And also then there's the whole sensei knows everything, a beginner is nothing. That happens often on the mat in dojos. And then a person comes with a sincere desire to learn the art of Aikido. But then he has no clue where to start. He has no clue where to begin, and you need a lot of mental effort to actually pull through that beginning period where you try to figure out what the hell is happening, what they're expecting from you, and at the same time, all these doubts are at the back of your mind as well. So this doesn't seem very efficient either. The philosophy, I don't see much of the philosophy here, and it's hard as well. Like hell, there's it just
It has a
doesn't.
lot to do with those expectations as well, like where you were
Right.
saying just earlier, if you're expecting to see one thing but you see another.
Right, exactly. And then eventually all these doubts coming together with this hard way of catching the basics of Aikido, it's such a big turnoff for a lot of people. I'm not surprised people are not going to Aikido so much anymore, or they come, check, and go out, especially young people. Young people, I'm not saying that we should be McDonald's, we don't have to be fast food nation, but young people are all about, they want to see results fast. The world is all about fast results these days. If you want if you want some information, it takes 10 seconds. And so like BJJ and MMA, as far as I experienced it, it's still hard. The dropout rate of BJJ is big because you get trashed a
I
lot in
thought
the
it'd be
beginning.
high.
Sorry?
Yeah. Well, I thought it'd be very high. Like it's very
Yeah, it
ego destroying
yeah,
martial
exactly.
arts.
Yes. And so the dropout rate is big, but at the same time, you see the power behind it straight away. You come in and you get so trashed, and you see such power that you're like, I want that. I'm gonna stick through it, and that's not everyone does it, but that promise of power keeps you going because you know you'll get there. Aikido has a big dropout rate, it has a big difficulty gap in the beginning, but then and there's no big promise. You're like, well, okay, so especially if let's say I'll be a bit bitter here, but let's say the sensei is well rounded. I mean, body wise, he's sorry to say he's fat, old, barely moves and talks one thing and does something else. Doesn't his whatever he says doesn't reflect in his lifestyle or whatever. And so I'm just talking about bad cases right now, but there's plenty of them to look at it. There's good cases, of course, as well, but the bad cases, then the person is like, okay, this is very hard, and I don't see where it's going. It's like, why should I bother? But then, so coming back to where I started from, one of the visions of this school of this line is that I'm trying to systemize everything down. So actually, I've separated right now the let's say I don't know, the first part of the modern Aikido school. There's ukemi, weapons, techniques, and self-development. And for example, ukemi, the trouble with ukemi, before my ukemi videos online, there was barely any systemization of it at all. I know Donovan White, I think that's the guy, who he made some videos about it, but I think that was one of the rare exceptions. And so there was not much ukemi stuff at all out there. Ukemi was kind of like you come in and you just how to roll, well, just place your hand here, and just try to roll. How do you do high falls? Well, just figure it out by yourself. There was no systematic, methodical approach given, especially on a big global level. And I think that's one of the reasons why that's where I started off my YouTube channel with. That's why people were excited, because finally somebody started making sense of the progression, how we can develop it. But that was still just initial steps, and I'm looking back at it. And so what I did, I took all the ukemi practices that I ever did and I ever mastered. I numbered them from the super most easiest one to the most extremely hard one that I can do. So right now it's 98 exercises, and that gives the progression of
Oh, cool.
all the stuff that I am capable of doing. But the beautiful thing behind it, and I'm still testing it, but we did a test session yesterday, and it was so far so good. But the vision is, first of all, that you learn the first steps easily. It's accessible to everyone. And then because you learn this, you're able to learn that. And because you learn this,
It's
you're able
really
to learn that.
appealing.
Right,
It's really
exactly.
cool. It reminds me a lot of like playing Street Fighter or video games where like
Right,
you
exactly,
do
exactly.
combos, you learn the easy one, and then they'll
Exactly.
teach you how to do the next one.
Right. It's true. It's a great point you're saying, because there's a bit of gamification here. If you heard the term,
Gamification.
gamification, it's where you
Yeah, yeah,
take game
yeah,
elements and implement it to daily life situations, and it really
yeah,
works. Our
yeah.
psyche likes
Yeah,
that.
it does.
So
Yeah,
right. So
it
that's
loves that
that's that
reward
that's
and
a
that
bit there.
progression.
Sorry.
I love that reward and progression.
Right. Exactly. And that's here too. And it's not a bad thing. I wouldn't say this is the term McDojo.
I've heard that. Yeah,
Yeah, so
yeah,
it's basically a money making dojo, which will say anything to you that you would just go and
mm,
pay money. So this is
mm,
not an intention to make a dojo, but rather because the hardest level, it will still be hard. I mean,
mm,
you will have to work for the highest level of ukemi. But then the thing is, when you will reach the point of high falls, because in that system there's a part where you start to do high falls, you will be able to do them fairly easily because you will have all the basics down beforehand. You will understand all the mechanics. You'll have it in your system. So instead of just
mm,
coming in and saying, "Well,
mm,
I'll try a high fall," you're
mm,
like, "Oh, I know how it works. I just need to do it now. It's time." So that's one part, is because it's very attractive to a new student, because he
mm.
comes in and he knows from the beginning where to start. He's like,
Yeah,
okay, I can do this, I can do this, I can do that. Now I can do this, and so he feels the progression, he feels his
yeah,
development, and at the same time, uh, similar to what I mentioned about BJJ, the promise of power. You see, you see, you come in on day one, and you can already check where you will be if you train enough. You're like,
mm,
wow, I'll do this high fall, I'll do this
mm,
backflip, whatever, I'll do that. It's like I don't believe it. But
mm,
it's clear, if I'll go through this
mm,
path, I will be able to do this. This is awesome. I want that, and now I know how to do it. I just
mm,
need to go and train. So that's very attractive because you know what you're gonna get. Same with weapons, same with techniques, traditional
mm,
techniques, which it's a bit of a tricky subject, but I can touch it someday too. But and then
mm,
self-development, which is another whole subject of how to make
mm,
that into a systemized approach.
mm.
But I'm working on it too.
Oh yeah, that'd be amazing.
Yeah.
Self-development.
So I
That's
can tell a
nice.
bit.
Yeah,
So
because that's the part I'm probably most interested in.
share, of course.
Because
I
I don't,
understand.
yeah, I love the martial side. I love the Ukemi side
Right.
particularly, but the self-development side, and you know about me, like I'm a strong believer in utilizing Aikido philosophy in
Yeah.
coaching and in therapy. So
Right. Right.
that's something that really speaks to me. And you were saying something earlier about how if you were going to be teaching striking, that would be with an opponent, because that reminds me a lot of with another human sparring partner.
Yeah.
Is that right? Yeah, because that reminds me like one of the most popular types of therapy
Mm.
in terms of treating anxiety
Yeah.
is like often criticized because it teaches someone how to deal with anxiety in the context of that counseling session. But
Mm.
as soon as that person leaves that counseling session and they're suddenly overwhelmed by different stimuli than they were
Mm.
exposed within the session, suddenly all that training goes out the window
Right.
because you get trained how to handle things within the context. So if
Right.
you're training all day on a bag, it doesn't
Sure.
teach you how
Oh
to
yeah.
actually train.
Yes. Yes. That's very true. That's very true, and that's one of the reasons why I don't want to bring that light to the regular the first part of Aikido, of modern Aikido, that to that false promise that if you train in these clean, nice environment,
Mm,
then you will go to chaotic parts of reality and you'll
mm,
do fine. It's like no,
mm.
that's this is why
Well,
I'm being careful about the second part of Aikido, the modern Aikido, the efficient martial arts side, like self-defense part, because my idea is that not especially up to a certain level, let's say Nidan, second black belt, that a person could choose not to practice it, but then there will have to be very clear honesty, of realizing our limitations. I am practicing Aikido as a self-development or spiritual path, and I'm not a fighter. And if I would like to be, I would go there, but I'm not. So don't expect that from me. So that would kind of clear up the reputation of Aikido, where a lot of people are claiming that they're great, although they have no clue what they're talking about. But then the efficient side, the self-defense side, potentially, and that's why I'm considering one of the questions that I'm asking myself, and I will investigate, is how messy does it have to get? How much do you have to get the person through pressure? And maybe if we would break it down to levels, maybe level 1 could be just some kind of principles, gentle practical application, which would work, which would be based on reality. But then level 2 or 3 would have to have some sparring, would have to have some intense, uncomfortable experience, which would get you ready for the scenario which you're afraid of, because you would go eye to eye with it. So this is a bit of another subject that I'm drawing off. I'll come back to self-development, but so yeah, the whole sparring and etc. It's if we want to achieve certain goals, then probably that's something we have to include to our training. So does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it does. For sure.
Cool. Well, okay. Well, we still have time. I'll talk a bit about the self-development part. So the hard part for me was always, as I was running my YouTube channel, I was always inspired about self-development, but it was always hard for me to talk about it, and we kind of talked with you about that a bit as well, because for a lot of people, what I specifically practice, what I specifically do is a bit foreign, unknown. For me, it feels like, okay, Aikido is all about this. And it's something I gained from my last Aikido instructor, some methods of self-development in Aikido practice through body movement, through body practice. And I think it's exceptional. It's really great what he has developed. And I took a big part of it, and I'm just trying now to push it to the next level. But if I would try to introduce it in a certain way, I would say it has some connection with neuro-linguistic programming, probably. If you ever heard about that? No? I'm not a neuro-linguistic guy myself, but I just know the basics. But basically, it's part of it is about the way I understand neuro-linguistic programming, or NLP in short, is being able to make influence to yourself or onto others through the means of verbal communication. But you would say, or actually not only, actually it can be touch as well, but basically, but you would be functioning not on the intellectual kind of, I would say, the upper level, but you would function on the deeper level of the brain, of the neural network, where you mainly make associations. So basically, you reprogram yourself or another person based on certain hints, either physical or verbal, and it's very, very powerful. This is something that commercials use a lot. One of the basics of how it works, it's all about association, and I fully believe that, and through my experience, that our mind works not so much in a rational way as in an associative way. So what I mean by that is that why commercials the way they are, you show a hamburger and then you show a happy family, you show a Diet Coke and then you show a sports person. Why? It's like, what's the relationship here? The rational mind understands this is nonsense, but then the lower part of the mind, if I would call it so today, makes an association directly. It works through the rational mind, and it makes the association that hamburger means happy family, and it works really badly. It really works, and that's the problem. That's why commercials are effective.
Manipulate people.
Sorry?
Advertising can use it to really manipulate people.
Right, exactly. And it's I would call neuro-linguistic programming dark magic oftentimes in the past. Like there's a whole book about seduction that I read many years ago, And it was a lot based on neuro-linguistic programming, and it worked. It was a real story about the whole society of pickup artists who were exploiting that, and it just totally worked on many women, because we all function, we're all wired on the same level, on the same way. So it's all about free wiring, and you can rewire yourself if you're conscious and intellectual enough. But most people aren't, and it works despite that anyway. But then why I'm talking about NLP, it's because there's some part of it which is physical as well. And the physical part is, there's a term called in NLP anchoring. So anchoring, as far as I got to learn about it, is where you associate, so use associations consciously. So you associate a certain sensation, for example, or a certain movement with a certain idea or a state. So one of the stories that I memorized well is, Tony Robbins?
No.
I'm not very fond of him. He's like the super guru of self-development. He's a bit controversial now these days. But anyway, so he was using NLP somewhat, and when I was listening to his audio, to his podcast, he was saying that he was coaching a basketball player, and the basketball player, he would be like a famous basketball player. He would be. He asked. So Tony Robbins asked him to throw a ball from like 3-point distance, and every time he would he would shoot through the net. Tony Robbins asked the basketball player to create a certain kind of ritual, like clap and say boom. I think that was it, and with a specific state energy. And then every time he would succeed in throwing the ball in, then he would do the same. And then so what it made, in order to shoot the ball correctly, your body has to work in a certain way. Like there's the zone, and every sportsman, every artist, everyone has the zone moment. It's when you just like shoot. I come from a basketball country and basketball family actually. So I know from familiar people who would say that sometimes they get into a zone and they would just hit the net all the time. And I would see that in basketball games as well. Then people would have to, like 3 people would have to defend that same guy, and he would always still score because he's in the zone. So that zone exists, but the question is, how can you tap into it consciously? And so what Tony Robbins did with that guy, he taught himself to program himself to anchor this movement and the sound with the state of the zone of being able to throw a ball, and it worked. Apparently his scores got much better because every time he needed to, he would go into the state through this simple mechanism. They would work.
Wow.
Right, yeah, very powerful, scary stuff. But then now I've expanded so much, so I'll just bring it back to Aikido, despite many examples that are possible here. But then in Aikido, that's one of the things I'm achieving. So I can say I'm achieving it because I've been working on it for the last 6 years, running my dojo. That helped me tremendously, and I see the transformation my students went through using these methods. And they're all technically, I mean, I'm not basing it too much on science per se, but it's more scientific than mystical, chakra, ki, energy. It's all about psychology. It's all about reality, results, direct results, and direct practice, experience, and sharing. So if we come back to the exam of the realm of self-development in Aikido, I think that might have been one of the hints of O-sensei, what he was trying to gather. I read in the past, when I was really into O-sensei's philosophy, he would say that Aikido's philosophy is inherent in Aikido techniques, and if you practice it, you will develop the right mentality of Aikido. Also, he would say that there was a question once asked in a famous interview with O-sensei, where there were 2 judoka asked, what if, because back then Aikido was considered to be very powerful and very effective back in the day, and then the judoka asked, what if an evil person comes and wants to learn Aikido? And O-sensei said, either an evil person will not come to Aikido, or if he will stay, he will become kind-hearted as he trains. Probably because he had the belief that the Aikido techniques are developed, and I think that's what he was trying to achieve. He was trying to develop Aikido techniques in such a way which would reprogram our conditioning, reprogram our way of relating to physical conflict, to pressure, to crisis, anxiety, etc. I don't think he's thought in that way, but I think that's what he meant at the back of his mind. And so if we take that and expand it, so even so one of the basic things that I implemented into my training, and I'll expose that, I'll use that in this new system. So one of the qualities that I presented, so one day short story about that. So one day I was frustrated with some of the black belts I passed a while ago. I brought up. I wasn't happy with the way they turned out. And I asked myself, what was missing in the training that I gave, which allowed them to become the way they were? So why there was no quality, quality testing or quality control?
Quality control.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Which would make sure that they would really, that I would let me make sure, really understand that they got the message of Aikido, that they represent Aikido from the core, not just they say the things I want to hear. And so I started developing this new system of qualities. So I asked myself, what are the qualities, the main qualities of Aikido that I see in Aikido techniques and Aikido movement, and that I see in Aikido and that I address as well. And the three beginning ones, primary ones, were openness. So in Aikido, I'm not so much visible here, but in Aikido, people are very open. You know, if you look like at most people, not everyone, but like if you look at Christian Tissier, you know, all this straight back, open shoulders, big presence. And in general, in Aikido, we tend to be open, much bigger. We don't collapse, don't drop in, which is not a bad thing either. But then that's the tendency in Aikido. Then there's stability or ground. So meaning in Aikido, especially like again, if we look at Tissier, you know Christian Tissier?
Not too sure.
He's a very well very highly regarded Aikido sensei from Europe, from France. So he's quite a bit on YouTube as well. I think you probably saw him somewhere. But so he's like top Aikido person, one of the top Aikido person in the world. So sooner or later you will stumble to him. But anyway, so Christian Tissier, if you ever watch his videos, he's very well grounded. He's like stuck to the ground. And a lot of senseis, good senseis, they're just, it seems like they weigh an extra ton. And so they're very stable on the ground. And also the third quality that I'm interested in was calmness, or I would say peace, but that's not necessarily exactly what I mean. It's, let's say, calmness or serenity. So, but that serenity, not the one where I doze off, but the one where I stay calm and awake at the same time. This is where actually openness and serenity come together, or calmness and openness, because openness is active, but as I become active, I don't become aggressive or hyperactive, but at the same time inside internally I stay calm, which is very important in a situation of crisis. Like even in the Aikido versus MMA video, I think that's what helped me keep my posture, because I was getting trashed, but then I was able to maintain that sense of that this is fine. I'm awake, I try my best, but I'm not collapsing inside internally.
Yeah.
So that's the serenity I mean. So basically those three qualities, and then I asked myself, how can I realized that they're connected both physically and internally, that there's a relationship. So this is a basic information from body language, that there's this test that can be done. I have a feeling you might have done it, but that if you stay open and breathe deeply, it's hard to be negative. If you close down and you breathe lightly, then it's hard to be positive. So that which represents that the mind and the body are very closely tied together, and so how the body, what the state is the body in, the mind is also influenced by that, and vice versa. So I decided to try to use that And the results were very successful actually. For about half a year or a year, I worked specifically with that on my group, and the results were great. I mean, people would. So I would specifically ask them to open up, to keep an open posture, to be big, to have more presence, to feel stable on the ground, and we would focus on a different quality each day, each training. So they would all the time try to sink into their feet, and also in terms of the ground. I'll just say a few more words about that, so you would see the possibility, the potential. I noticed through experimenting and through developing this mechanism that when we have doubts, our attention goes up. We start to become, or if we're very thoughtful, we have doubts, we're not grounded. There's this interesting, I read about this scientific kind of research test. I never checked if it's true or not, but it made sense, where muggers, people who would rob other people, they were shown anonymously, they were shown people walking on a profile level, different people, and they asked who they would attack and who not. And they chose all the same people, and they had no clue why. It was very instinctive. But when the scientists look at why they would attack certain people, the difference was their center of gravity. If the person was bouncing up and down, if he didn't have a good center of balance, then they would attack that person. If the person was grounded, stable on the ground, they wouldn't attack him. And I think because that reflects that if our center is grounded, psychologically we tend to be much more grounded as well. And I noticed that by observing other people as well. People who are very messy in the head, very chaotic, they tend to be wobbly in their body. They're not very conscious in their body. They don't have a good base ground. So to summarize all that, to give a glimpse of what I'm trying to achieve here and create. So I took those three qualities, I kept developing them. So for example, if a person would have doubts, or even myself, then you in the training, you develop the anchor of staying grounded, of having the body sensation of grounding through doing techniques, through doing all Aikido exercises, doing weapons. You all the time focus on that. So it's kind of a mechanism to develop that. And then in everyday life, if you would have doubts, for example, at that moment I started to walk in the city oftentimes with my gi, with the hakama. I realized that it's just much more comfortable for me to not change all the time. So I go from home with my gi, I come back, and sometimes I go shopping with it. So that's the fun I have in my life. But then in the beginning, it was a bit stressful because people look at me, they're
Right.
and I question myself: is this okay? Is this like, does this make sense? And every time I would have doubts, I would use that. I would go back to my ground. I would go back into the feeling of groundedness, into the feeling of feet. I would go back into this state of Aikido, and it would work. The doubts would just come back, and I would be grounded. The doubts would go out. If I would do a seminar, and the seminar was hard, and I had doubts, I would bring back myself down to the groundedness, etc., etc. So I would teach that to my group, and through specific exercises that I developed, like keeping an Aikido stance, which is checked by other people, doing techniques with that, etc., etc. And it had very good results. I saw people becoming more confident. I saw people becoming more open, etc., etc. So it was great. It was great seeing. And what I'm trying to jump forward in time, what I'm trying to achieve right now is there's many more exercises like that. Like, for example, the ability to say no, which can be expressed and internalized through body mechanics, through body sensations, working with pressure with another person. You learn to say no internally through the body, and then later you remember that feeling, and you have an easier time to say no, which is a big problem most people have. They're too polite, they can't say no. You learn to say no in everyday life. Same with freedom of movement, or many things. And I actually already broke down everything that I can offer through various exercises, and so far it looks very promising.
Yeah, so sounds a lot like mindfulness, or the things you just mentioned, or Gestalt.
Yeah, sure. It's similar, and it's everything is interrelated. Everything is similar. I think it's these days it's hard to it's nearly impossible to create something new, entirely new. I think it's just I think Einstein said that nobody creates anything new. People just some people just connect the dots which weren't connected before.
Yeah.
So this is the same here. Yeah.
And by delivering it in a form that people are interested in already and already committed to, which is Aikido, they're more attracted to it and it's going to be more effective to them as opposed to them learning mindfulness through an app.
Sorry?
As opposed to them just learning it on an app or
sure, of course. Yeah.
Oh,
definitely.
Avenue.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Right, exactly, because this is the intention is to really prove that it works, to really give a sense, and as you mentioned, this is impossible to learn just by, especially the more advanced practices. It's impossible to learn without another person giving you pressure, without the interaction, without the whole sensation of it, which is where Aikido comes into play so much, because Aikido always was 80% about partner practice, which yoga actually, for example, a lot of people say if you want self-development, drop Aikido, just go to yoga. Why do you go to Aikido for self-development? The thing is, if we look at this vision, yoga is all about serenity. Depends on the style, but there's no conflict in yoga. There's partner work. If you do asanas together, there's no conflict, there's no pressure, there's no crisis there. There is, but it's not that big. In Aikido, you get direct pressure, you get intensive physical experience through the dynamics of two people or a group of people, and it's exceptional. I'm not exactly sure what other practice offers that, if it does. That's why I'm excited to look at it.
That's right. Yeah, it has the opportunity to offer something quite unique because it does have that feedback.
Right, exactly. Right, exactly.
I'm wondering, like, how can you make the most of that? Because, the examples you gave of, getting grounded, being aware of, your body, in a sense, were situations where you were often by yourself. Like, you're receiving feedback from maybe, like, other people looking at you.
Yeah.
But you weren't receiving, like, a direct, like, you weren't given a direct response. You weren't given something to directly respond to. Like, it wasn't like somebody saying, hey, I want you to do this, and because you're not good at saying no, like you said, that you do it anyway. So I think that's where you can do that unique aspect of it,
right?
Where you can utilize this when you're having those confrontations.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's one of the things where I'm excited about. When I do corporate seminars, I mainly draw inspiration from these exercises. I mainly use them. And why I'm excited and people who are in that course becomes excited, because when you learn theoretically something, it's quite easy to pretend. I'm like a lot of yoga is like that. It's like they know how to look peaceful. They know how to talk peaceful. But often it's like some of those people are really bad, and it just doesn't take much for their true face to come up. So they talk about peace, they read about peace, but there's no quality control. There's no pressure testing. There's no physical, for example, there's no dynamics which makes sure that yoga instructor is really peaceful in the midst of the biggest crap. While in Aikido, we have the potential to experience that. You can push the person physically, to the lengths where he will have to either do the exercise or break down. And if he doesn't do the exercise internally, externally it will fail. And it'll be obvious that even if he understands theoretically what it is, he can say, oh yes, I'm very good at saying no, I say no all the time. And you give him that exercise and he's not able to do it even one bit. That's a proof that he just thinks too much about himself. He's not really capable of doing that. But this unique dynamic of Aikido has the chance of really testing yourself and seeing if it really works, seeing that it does work. And just one of the final thoughts here as well that I wanted to include is that also why I have so much trust in this, because from all that I read and all that I learned about Aikido, not specifically about, let's say, saying no, but in terms of development, Osensei was all about that, especially in his later years. He was all about that. For him, like, there's so many quotes of Aikido is. I remember very, very clearly the phrase where he said, "What Aikido is not about techniques. What Aikido is spiritual." He would punish his students for doing push-ups. He would be upset about people not understanding the philosophy, because for him, philosophy was key. Aikido is the way to reconcile the world. Aikido is about understanding that we're all one family, etc., etc. There's so many quotes. He made Aikido specifically for that, but it was never really developed in such a way where that would be clearly received. But there's no contradiction here with what Aikido is supposed to do, besides the martial aspect, which is going to be tackled on the other side of it. So, and that's it's big. I know it's
yeah. No, like just things you mentioned, because like from even like a very, very microorganism biological point of view, like everything is connected.
Yes.
All cells are connected, everything is connected, and that's really what I felt like Sensei was talking about.
Right. Yeah.
That like there's this idea that it's called systems theory, which is like the more connected you are, the more opportunities you'll get, the more flow you will get, as long as you're connected.
Nice. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's what people really struggle with when they go to a new dojo. Something I've struggled with a lot. In terms of getting new dojos, where like I don't feel that connection. Like I don't feel like, okay, this isn't a unit. These are a group of individuals working alongside each other.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. This is one of the big issues of Aikido that I see, and I'm so much openly against, because Aikido claims to be something which it rarely shows, rarely expresses. And this big step that I'm making right now, it took me quite a bit of time to decide to do it. I was questioning whether I should do it, whether I'm the right person, or whether I should just really take that responsibility on, at least to a certain degree, until that gets momentum on its own. But then at the same time, in my dojo, the interesting thing is practicing these things. So many times I heard people come in and say, "Oh wow, you have such a great group of people." And like, you have such nice people. And in the beginning I thought, oh, I'm so lucky. I have great people come to me. But then with years of work and practice, I realized it's actually not the case. The case is good people come, but they actually become great because of the practice, and they feel the environment is safe and prosperous, and they allow themselves to flourish. And that's why they're great. That's why people come in and enjoy the atmosphere so much, not because random people accidentally came into one spot where they're all good, but because we are able to create that synergy. So it really offers that potential of what Aikido was always about. So, yeah.
Right.
Well, I'm looking at the clock that it's 12 at your place, right?
Yeah.
So because I said most of the things I was trying to say, so and I still want to ask you one more question personally when I finish the recording. But did you want to add anything before I cut the recording?
Yeah, maybe next, because I do want to go over that PDF some more. So I actually want to be a bit more thorough, because I just very quickly glanced over.
Oh, sure.
Something I did want to mention is, like, for me, who is very much into Aikido because of the philosophy, that the way I interpret the martial side is through metaphor. So I understand, like, all these Ikkyo and Ikkyo, I try to interpret them as, okay, what philosophy am I trying to learn here? And I think for me, that's been very powerful, because I'm discovering and making my own interpretations and applying them in my own ways.
Sure.
And I was wondering if, because you're trying to separate that, like from what I understand, the purpose is pure martial. There isn't really a space for interpretation of
that's
metaphor.
Right. That's a great question you're asking, and it's a good one to address. So one thing I didn't mention, which is very important to mention, is that the efficient part of Aikido that I would like to develop, I would like it to still be based on the core philosophy, core essence of Aikido. And I'm still trying to break it down what it is. So, for example, nonviolent solution of physical conflict, not using strength, but basically that it would still be about unification. And so one of the kind of dream parts that I have sooner or later, so that in the beginning I want to just tackle the very clear issue of Aikido techniques are not designed for what they're supposed to be designed. So to look at that. But then the next step for me would be also to include nonverbal, both nonverbal and verbal conflict resolution. So basically that system would potentially, this is kind of still a hint to a vision I have, but still, that system would also address, okay, so how do you act if somebody is trying to intimidate you? You know, what do you say? How do you keep your posture? How do you try to bring that person back to balance on a verbal level? And this is still part of the whole martial aspect, because I have a belief. I still have to I still have to prove it to myself, but I have a belief that 90%, if not more, of physical conflict is avoidable. It's just because we make bad decisions, we get ourselves into trouble. You know, we walk at the wrong place at the wrong time. We say the wrong thing to the wrong person. We give the space. We give the space for another person to use physical force against us. So that for me is so much more important to address than just the physical aspect, because most people will never have to fight in their entire lives. If it comes to that, I would like them to know what to do, but maybe even so, in a greater vision, to do it until the moment where I can communicate and say, no, can we please stop now? You know, you can see that I could break your arm, but now just let's go have a beer and talk about your problems. So basically, so that would be included in the core concept of the efficient Aikido, that it wouldn't be just about kicking someone's ass. It would be about protecting yourself and others, and also hopefully including the attacker, realizing that the attacker, he's not the enemy. What was the vision of Osensei all the time, to realize that he's just a lost person. He's as my last instructor said, that he's just having a nightmare. And how can I bring him back from that nightmare? Maybe I will need to use some techniques to get to a point where he starts to listen to me, where he realizes, oh man, I chose the wrong person, and he has doubts. And instead of saying, now you'll regret, you know, which is a lot of combat practice are about that. They're just like, I'm gonna kick your ass. You chose the wrong person. I'm gonna make you regret it. This would be about, okay, there's a moment of doubt. I include some key phrases to become best friends.
Yeah, or even after, if it does get to that step where there is a confrontation, that like what you kick their ass and then they're on the floor and what you walk away.
Yeah.
Like I don't feel like I love this video that happened in my city a few days ago where like two guys just beat each other on the train.
Yeah.
And then like afterwards they're like, hey man, I have to work. Let's stop. And like, yeah, let's stop, and then hug each other.
Right. Oh,
like, I feel like
sweet. That's awesome.
Like there's always like a step missing. Like, okay, you kicked their ass. Okay.
Right.
How's that affect them? You know.
Right. Totally. This is very, very good point too. That besides Aikido, I never came across a martial practice, which would clearly address that subject. That the attacker is not really an enemy. He's just a confused, lost person. He's a cause of he's a consequence of a lot of bad causes. And if I shut away myself, if I disconnect myself from him, then it's like I'm here and he's separate, and he's the enemy, he's the bad guy, and I just need to destroy him. There's no solution there. There's no. It's the winning is very, very partial. But if I understand from the first moment, and I'll just actually bring two levels here. So one level is, if I understand from the first moment that he's not the enemy, but I'm not able to defend myself, I know that I don't have the martial capacity to defend myself, there is a small percentage, but a bigger percentage of chance that I will have doubts. I will not come across as confident as I need to be in order to communicate to him. He might not respect me enough because he'll see me as a victim. And whatever technically, theoretically, I'll say, oh, we're all one family, you know, just you don't understand what you're doing. It's not necessarily going to always help. But if I have the martial capacity where I know, look, I know how to defend against you. I'm confident here, but you're making a mistake. You know, just like before you hurt either of us, let's just do something else. You know, let's talk about it. And this power, I feel even in myself, it was lacking in the past because there was too much doubt in my mind of, okay, if my verbal communication doesn't work out and fighting starts, what do I do? And that doubt, it doesn't help the conversation. So I think that's part of the confidence, which is important, which that efficiency could give. So basically, if I try to answer your question well enough, that the key philosophy of Aikido would stay in the efficiency aspect. It's just the self-development wouldn't be as primary as the solution of conflict on verbal, nonverbal, and physical level. But if you want the self-development aspect purely, then you go there. And if you want, you mix them both. That's kind of the vision.
That's exciting. Very
exciting.
I
know.
Yeah. It is exciting.
Yeah, I know. It's just think I just need to make sure I'm alive, and I just continue doing that.
That's what you need to do. Yeah.
Yeah. No, but but besides that, I'm like having the support of people, like even this conversation, just to talk about it, to express that I have it all in my mind, but I didn't express it so much with people these days, and just to talk about it, to clarify it, to get feedback, it makes all the difference as well.
Yeah, it helps it grow.
Yeah. So, cool. Anything else you wanted to add in or chip in before the end?
No, all good.
Okay. So last thing I'll say in terms of the videos, don't worry about it. I fully understand. I mean, I'm publishing 5 videos per week, not with the expectation that everyone will watch it. I barely have time to watch anything myself. Like even my colleagues, like what Lenny Sly puts out, I'm oftentimes fascinated by what he does in terms of the physical aspect, and like the Aikido Flow guys. I would love to watch their videos. I mean, I'm all about them, but I just can't. I just don't have the time. So I'm not surprised that other people have the same thing with my videos. So that's not a problem.
No, it's good. It's just unexpected.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
You were somewhat dormant for a while, and then
exactly.
All of a sudden,
I forgot about
a dozen videos. Yeah.
No, that was pre getting help from another person. So I was like waiting for the perfect moment, and now it's just like I'm just throwing stuff at him. So it's good.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good.
Well, cool. So I'll just turn off the recording. Hopefully it recorded well.